Check it out. Shake that ass. Check it out. Now stop.
I'm gonna scan this one first. Yeah, I'm the same. Bitch, don't tell her what you saying. She could do. She know what to do.
All right, all right. All right, one more to go here. All right, anybody got any questions I can address? I'm going to finish up stuff for this chapter. Next Tuesday, I'm sorry, next Tuesday is Mardi Gras. Thursday will be our review day of everything. So both 020 and 120 will be devoted to getting ready for that test. I highly recommend using the review. I just went through during the little break, and almost everybody, the score they had on that review is generally what they got on the test or better. And that doesn't happen with everybody. And if you got concerns about that part, it may well be used due to test anxiety. And the only thing I can say is just work the review as much as you can until you come comfortable with it. Don't use any kind of notes. Just do it as best you can. Go back and review. And then each time should hopefully improve. All right, so let me share. All right. All right. So this is what I want to look at. We looked at it last time, but I want to make sure we got the idea and we just worked with it as well. But this one is a little bit more complicated because it's got a negation in each one. Okay. There's a negation in each one of the two statements. So we got to be careful. Got to be careful. All right. So what I've done is I've defined P as there's a chicken in the pot and Q is there will be dinner. So the one that we're working on is if there is not a chicken in the pot, then there will be no dinner. All right. So there's room here for mistakes. So follow along closely. And if you got questions, let me know. Now, remember, so for a conditional, so the converse is just swap them around. Now, the problem is that it's of the form of not P.
Shut up. Back to water. All of it.
Okay, so that's what this statement looks like when we write it out, translate it. All right, so the converse is just turning them around. So not Q, not P. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to translate this now using that P and that Q. So the converse will be If there is no dinner, there is no chicken in the pot. Okay, so there is the converse in blue. Any questions about that process? Because this is one of the harder ones because it's got a negation in both the antecedent and the consequent. All right. So the next one we need to do is the inverse. So the inverse is not P, not Q. So if not P, then not Q is the converse of the conditional statement. All right. But ours looks like this. So that's not P, not Q. So then that gives us P, oops, Q. So then we're going to just translate that using this P and Q. So the inverse is if there is a chicken in the pot, there will be dinner. That's the inverse. And these two are the converse and the inverse are equivalent statements. In other words, if we would do the truth table form, we're going to come up with the same column on each one with the same order of true and falses. Now the contrapositive is when we just do both, not Q, not P. All right. Now ours is a little different because here's our statement. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn them around. So the best way to say it is to take the converse. Where was our converse at? Right there. So we're going to take that converse and then we're going to negate. So that's not Q, not P. And again, what's going to happen is it's going to negate the negation. So we got Q, P. If Q, then P. So to just translate that, if there is a chicken in the, oops, I'm sorry, if there is dinner, then there is a chicken in the pot. Because now when we negate the negation up here on the converse and the inverse, they both become in the affirmative, the positive. All right. And just remember, because Alex asked you, these are equivalent. The conditional and the contrapositive are equivalent. The converse and the inverse are equivalent. All right. Any questions, folks? So let's go back to the notes, and then we're gonna have kind of one thing to finish all this chapter. All right. All right. Now the whole purpose of this, just like with chapter 2, when we did our set operations and all that, it led up to actually doing something practical, which was the survey problem. All right. And we did both 3 and 2 set Venn diagrams, and then answered questions about them. With this one, thankfully, we're only going to be working, mainly be working with the 2 statements, but you might find one in there that's got 3 in it, mainly 2. All right. So symbolic arguments are what we're looking at in order to finish up this chapter. All right. So an argument is either valid or invalid. And if it's invalid, it's also called a fallacy. But how do we know that it's a valid argument? Well, a valid argument is just when the conclusion necessarily follows from a given set of premises. The truth table will have all T's. Remember that definition, the tautology? Well, we don't really need to know the definition here, but the tautology just means all T's. So if the truth table has all T's in that final column, it's a valid argument. There's also another way to find it, but for the most part, there's no way of getting around truth tables. All right. So this is what we do. We go back to section 1, which was we're going to take and translate each simple statement in our argument to a letter. In other words, set each simple statement to a letter. Then we're going to do something here that we haven't done yet. This is the new part. We're going to express the argument symbolically, and I'll show you that in a minute. Once we do that, that's going to help us do something. But once we do that, we're going to write it as a statement, a conditional statement. An argument is always expressed as a conditional statement with all the premises on the left-hand side being your antecedent, and then what's on the right of the arrow is called the conclusion. Now, once you complete your truth table for that conditional statement, then you're going to see if it's got all T's. And if it just has one false in there, no good. It's an invalid argument. All right. Just one false pulls it. All right. So let's move on and look at the process of doing this. All right. So I got this little argument here, and this is goes back to Star Trek, and I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be Captain Kirk. I'm no Star Trek expert, but just I've seen the first few of the first ones enough to know who Mr. Scott and Spock is, and as far as I know, it's Captain Kirk. Now this could be from a movie, so I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I thought it was Captain Kirk always. All right, anyway, but that doesn't matter. That's neither here nor there. What we want to do is we're going to read this and see that it's an argument, and we're going to translate it as such. So it says, in Star Trek, the spaceship Enterprise is hit by an ion storm, causing the power to go out. Now, here's the part. Captain Kirk wonders if Mr. Scott is aware of the problem. Mr. Scott replies, if Mr. Scott is still with us, then the power will come back on momentarily. Here's the broken part. Moments later, the ship's power comes back on. Right now, let's put this into an argument. That's what this is right here. This is the verbal argument. If Mr. Scott is still with us, then the power will come on. The power comes on, therefore, Mr. Scott is still with us. Now, let's look. So first thing is we're going to write simple statements for each one. There's only two simple statements. Mr. Scott is still with us, and the power comes back on. So P is Mr. Scott is still with us. Q is the power will come on. So in symbolic form, it looks like this. This is how you write a symbolic argument. This is premise one. This is the if Mr. Scott is still with us, then the power will come on, because it's if P, then Q. That's the first premise. Now we got to have at least two premises. So the next premise is Q, which was the power comes on. See that? These are right next to the statement. All right. Line right there means that we're finished with all of our premises. So now we write the conclusion, and that's simply what this dot means. It's like a triangle. That essentially means therefore. If this and this, then this. All right. So this right here is the symbolic argument. Now, I'll show you what we can do with that in a minute, but we're going to write this, first of all, as a conditional statement. All right. So here's the symbolic conditional statement. Here's the first premise. Here's the second premise. So here's the first one. That's it right there. The second one is a Q. These are put together with an and, because essentially what you're saying, if premise one and premise two, then the conclusion of P. All right. So now what we want to do is do the truth table for that. And let's see if I can get us some room in here. And there should be enough here to do this. All right, so I'm going to create a truth table. As I had said, truth tables play a big part here. It's really almost impossible to get through this chapter without being able to do these. It's like the set operations. So I'm going to set this up the way that Alex sets it up, which is P. Not a good P. And there's Q. So true, false. True, false, true, false. All right, and that gives us all the combinations. Now, what we're going to do is just build this, and we always work from the innermost parentheses outward. Oops. You know? So that's going to be the if P then Q. And that's just the standard one from the notes. All right. So this is true. Made it too big. Here's the false one right there. Order true false with a conditional is false. And the rest of these are true. And that's just the standard one. If you go back to that page 21 for that, the summary of the truth tables, that's just verbatim from that. All right. Now, what we're going to do is this part. We've got this one done. We already had the Q done. So what we're going to do, we're going to put P two and Q. All right. So now we're looking at the Q and the if P then Q, and we're using our AND rule. Get our AND in our head. The AND is only true if we got true, true. As long as there's one false in there, it's false. So that's true. Because true, true. That one's false. This is true. Because that's true, true. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Back up, back up, back up, back up. Yeah, that's right. All right. So true, true is true. True and true is true. False and false is false. True and true is true. And false and true is false for the and. The and is only true when you got two truths. Now, let's see if I can wedge this in here. All right. So we're going to now, I'm going to just take the P and put it over here. Just so there'll be an order, because remember, the conditional statement is order dependent. So this is just a rewrite of I can do better than that. Let me fix that a little bit better. False, false. All right. Now, this whole thing right here is what we're working on. So that's going right here. I don't have enough room to write it right there. But what I'm going to put is a nice arrow, because that's the rule we're using. All right. So now I'm using the conditional rule, and the conditional rule is it's going to be true 3 out of 4 times. The only time it's false is for this rascal right here, which is order true false. The rest of them are true. So now we're done. Is this a valid argument? What do we say about the valid argument? It's what? If the answer column, which is that last column, has all T's in it, then it's valid. Are there all T's there?
No.
No, there's not. So this is invalid. Okay. Now, let me show you something else. Now, sometimes you can shorten things up and not have to do a truth table, or you can use the truth table to see if you're right, because you can also do this sometimes. All right. Here are what we call the valid forms of arguments. Let's see if I can put it up here some. There we go. So we're looking at this argument here. All right. That's what we call the symbolic argument. And we're going to look at these here. Let's see if I can get rid of that one. Does it look like any of these? I can't really put them both on the screen at the same time. So the ones that are valid are if then P, if P then Q, P leads to Q. That's the law of detachment. It's also called just direct reasoning. You don't have to know the names, but you need to recognize the pattern. So this is the law of contraposition. If P then Q, then not Q, brings us back to not P. The law of syllogism is pretty simple, because if we go to P to Q and then Q to R, then we could jump across and just go P to R. And the disjunctive syllogism is just, if the first premise is P or Q, then the not P takes out the P, and the only thing we got left is a Q. But this one right here, the one there for that argument that I got up there that was on the screen, is this one right here. This is called the fallacy of the converse. The fallacy of the converse. In other words, this matches our results here for the truth table. So we could confidently say that this is an invalid argument. Invalid. All right. So that's pretty much it for the chapter. Like I said, you're still doing truth tables. The only thing that's really new here is the symbolic form, writing it in the symbolic form. If you write in the argument in the symbolic form, then you can just compare it to these. All right. All right. Any questions? All right. I'm gonna give you okay. I was gonna give you one of these to do. I'll tell you what. I'll write it up here. So what we're going to do is go back to the first thing that we talked about. And I'm going to task you to do it. And I'm going to sit here and give you a few minutes. All right. So what I want you to do is just find the converse, inverse, and counterpositive for this. Give it a try where you're at, and then I'll give you about 5 minutes, and I'm going to write the forms up here. So remember the converse. So the conditional is just the if P then Q. The converse turns them around. The inverse is negating them in the same order as the conditional. And then the contrapositive is essentially do both. All right, so y'all give a whack at it. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, so till 7:40, and then they'll come back and go through it. I don't want to get rid of that. Is it not going to let me just erase this? Yeah, it is. Well, we'll just have to leave it there. All right, so give you 5 minutes till 7:40, and then we'll go through it. So that'll get you started. P is where you're hungry. Q is where you go to a restaurant. right, so you sure about those, Nick? If somebody else has got, we can double check. All right, just like a few, maybe 30 seconds. All right. So the converse is just turning them around. Okay. Just turning them around. Because the conditional is the one we're given there. If we are hungry, then we go to a restaurant. So the converse is going to be just turn them around. If we go to a restaurant, then we are hungry. All right. So that's the converse. Inverse. That's where we're going to negate them each in that same order. All right. So I'm going to have not Q. I'm sorry, not P and not Q with the if then in it. So if we are not hungry, then we do not go to a restaurant. Okay, and the converse and the inverse are logically equivalent. If we did the truth table for those, they should have the same order. Contrapositive. If we do not, because it's not Q, then we are not hungry. All right. Any questions about how that's done? We got plenty of time, so I'm going to give you I'm going to give you an argument in a minute. So as much time as we need to spend on this. Because we got like half an hour. All right. So y'all okay with it?
I think so.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's see. What else we can get to? I want to give you an argument to. So let's erase this. All right. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over here, and I got an argument over here. So here's the question I got for this one right here. Okay. Valid or invalid? So remember what you're doing. You're just going through this process. Same thing. Use the letters to represent the simple statements. Express it symbolically, and then that can be used to compare. And then you do your truth table, and that will tell you if it's valid because it would have all T's. So I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then I'll put in the P and Q part, and just take it a step at a time.
You doing what?
This
Only
Facebook.
bad thing I ever
Oh, all right.
happened to me was me jumping out. I wasn't doing
I
that.
still thought.
How many statements we got here? I need to take a graduate class in evidence gathering or civil rights. In other words, it's saying, or I need to take a class in civil rights. Because you can see it in the second premise. They've got the negation of that I couldn't get into the class on civil rights. Okay. First step. All right. So there's an or. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put it over here. So we can just read across. All right. Okay. So there's our two premises. The first one represents I need to take a grad class in evidence gathering, or I need to take a class in civil rights. I couldn't get into a class on civil rights, and I should. I left something out. Let me go back. It's not Q. Q. It's not Q. Okay. And then here's our line. The line represents the separation between the premises and the conclusion. So conclusion, that symbol is just a little triangle looking thing. And what's the conclusion? That's P. P. So there's our argument. The symbolic argument, we call it. Now, do we have any idea whether this argument is valid or invalid yet? Any idea?
No.
You gotta do your table.
Yeah, we got to do a table now. Could also think about these, but let's go back. Let's do the table. And the reason why I got it smack dab right next to it is just so that these line up. This first premise is the P or Q. The second one is the not Q. And then the third one is the conclusion of P. All right, so let's do a table. Table always works. Okay. And so this is going to be true, true. Again, Alex does this for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But the way you write it on paper is you go 2 trues and 2 falses. Okay. So that's the initial setup. Like I said, Alex fills that part in for you when they give you a problem. All right. Now, here's our premise one right there. Well, you know what? I should have done this first. Let me go ahead and write it over here. See where I can put it out. So we want to write it as a conditional statement. So there's the premise one. We separate the premises by the with the and. So we wall off our premises. And there we got it. So that's what we're building the truth table for. All right. So I got to build it a piece of time. So the first thing I'm going to do is go inside of the parentheses, work on this first. Okay. So this is P or Q. Now you got to get it in our heads now. The P or Q is true almost all the time. The only time it's false is if we got two falses. And you know what? That one's right here. All these other ones, they have one T in there, so they're true. This is just verbatim. And in my 120 today, which is the same, on the same level, same pace as you guys, they were starting to work on these in Alex, where they take you through the or and the and for one module, or and a negation, making sure that you understand what you're doing. You go into that little table, that little summary that I showed you on page 21, pulling those things out and just putting them verbatim. And that's what's happening here on this one. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do not Q. I'm going to do the opposite of Q.
Be false.
What's that?
False.
Yeah. Good. False. What's next then?
True.
Good. Next.
False.
Good, good, good.
True.
Very good, very good. All right, that's the next step. Now, what are we doing? We're putting both of these together, and it's going to go right here in the next step. See, we're working our way out. The set operations were the same procedures. You work on the inside, go outward until you got that whole left-hand side done. So I'm going to write it right here. P or Q and not Q. All right. So what I'm doing, and I'm going to underline this. The only thing I'm really looking at here is the and. And I'm performing the and on this one and this one. So I'm using the and rule. And now it becomes a bit abstract because it's not just verbatim, but we still have to capture the rule and use it perhaps in a different order. All right. Because they're not going to be the exact same order as it is verbatim when they're just asking about or and and. But the rule still applies because we still only put a T when we got two T's. If there's any falses in there, it's false. So we're looking at true, false, true and false. True and false is
true and false. False.
True and false is
False.
false. If it were true or false, then correct. But this is true and false. That's why I underline that right there. See that? So this is true and false is false. This one
True.
is true. Good. Here's another false. It's got a false in there, so it's false.
False.
And then false and true is also false. All right. So that's this whole left-hand side. We got one more step before we're done on this.
Condition.
We got to do that. Yeah, great, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the P right here again. And the reason why I do that, even though it's already over here, is I don't want to have to read across a bunch of lines because there's 3 other things in between this. And old dyslexic me will invariably look at the wrong column. So if I'm always looking at the last 2 columns, which is what Alex allows you to do because it's got that little plus thing up at the top and you can put one in there and it's not part of it. Only looks at the last column for your answer. You can put any number of extra columns in there. So I'm just going to repeat P and I'm going to do false, false. All right. And so the last thing is the whole thing. And like you said, Felicia, we're going to do the conditional now. We're using the conditional rule. And let's see, I can go back up here and look at the conditional rule just to remind us. It's just that it kind of gets jumbled, but see, there they are. The conditional rule is this one right here. The second to last one from the right. It's always true. The only time it's false is when we have true, false. The order is important. True, false. The other way, false, true is true. The only one that's false is true, false. So that being said, what I'm going to put here is false, true is true. True, true is true. False, false
True.
is true. False, false
True.
is true. All right. That's it.
So now it's valid.
Oh, wow. Great. Yeah. This is a valid argument. So
Wow.
valid. Now, let me just ask us, you folks. Where's it at? So here's those valid arguments. And I'm trying to put this right next to it. It's kind of hard, but see, this one is disjunctive syllogism. Does that one right there, in other words, this part right here, I was trying to see if I could get that. I guess I can. But does this one right here, P or Q, not Q, then P, does it match any one of those? And this is not an easy question. It's, you got to use a little bit of brain power to see this, because this could be Q here, not Q, and then we could have P, and it would be a form of the distinctive syllogism, because what you're saying is, if you've got P or Q and you get rid of Q by saying not, then the only thing you've got is P. Just like here, P or Q, not P, leaves us with Q. So likewise, this one does the same thing. So that gives us double assurance that we've got valid argument. If you're able to check things, which this is allowing us to do that, do it by doing it two different ways. And that's especially important. Sometimes the only way you can check is just to go back and look over your steps and see if you got a mistake. This one, we really didn't make any mistakes, but we noticed that it fits that valid form. All right, any questions?
Yes, when we got
All right.
multiple, I have one. I just want to
Okay,
be sure.
shoot.
I just want to be sure. Like this one had conditional and what is it, conditional? We can put that P again like you did. You see how you did that P? You started out with P again, so you could have to go jump way back over there.
Yeah, so I didn't have to jump back. Plus, it puts them in order, because remember, the conditional is always the last step for an argument.
Okay.
It's a conditional statement. So when you're creating the truth table, the last step will always be the conditional, and the order is important for that. So that's why I rewrote the P here.
Okay.
All right.
That makes sense, because you can lose track.
Yeah. Anybody got anything else? Well, look, if you don't have any questions, a little bit early since it's Mardi Gras. Felicia, I wanted to talk to you a minute when everybody's going, okay?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to answer some of those questions you had. And it's easier to do it like this than do it in email.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Be safe this Mardi Gras. Don't get in any trouble.
You too.
I'm going to try.
Thank you.
Try not to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mr. Cruz, I have to apologize. I be having anxiety attacks and panic attacks.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And I just be want to get it right and understand.
I know.
And, yeah. So
that's all right. Because
yeah,
I get like that too. So I just wanted to see if anybody else needs any questions before we.
Okay.
Reagan, Naomi.
Oh, have a great one. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Sorry.
All right. So these other people probably went to sleep in this. No, let's see here.
And then it's like I keep going having like I know how to do my decimals around it, and I keep having panic attacks. And it's like,
well, I know that's what I wanted to talk, because me and you got some stuff in common. All right. So I went and I looked in the grade book. You took that thing, that practice 5 times, and you had an 80 something on it. So obviously what happened is you getting anxiety because it's the real test, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wish I could say I had some other kind of panacea, but the only thing I can offer is you got my support here, but I can't make it easier on you.
I know. But I
in
see
any kind of
that
way. You know what I'm saying is? I can't
I
take the
understand. I
material out of
wasn't.
the.
I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
know. I mean, you get anxious like me, and I know because I conflict often with people if they got the same kind of get panic attacks, and I'll get one, and we'll go at it. So
But
I just
also,
want you to
like, I
know.
appreciate. I'm sorry.
But I just want you to know, I'm not upset at you for asking stuff, and and you because I really don't, I really believe a student should be able to say anything they want to their teacher, and their teacher should be able to guide them along because you got to be able to express your frustration. So keep at it, doing the same thing you did. You did the right thing. I just want you to calm down as we get
Yes.
closer. All right,
Yes, sir.
calm down. Don't let that path fool you. I mean, frustrate you because if you don't complete it all, it's not the end of the world. What's the end of the world is we don't want to repeat that mistake over and over that you had with that test because you did what was
Sure.
right there. That's what I tell people to do. And if everybody did that, we would have a lot more good grades in the class.
Well, I
But I can
think
tell you got an anxiety issue.
I have like 50, about 50 more percent to doing that 3.3. Then I'm gonna go ahead and start taking my pre-test if it's allowed, so I can get used
Yeah,
to
it should open
taking
up.
the
Let me
test.
double check. Let me double check and see if it's
Like,
open because you want to do it early. That's a good way to deal with that.
I can get comfortable with taking the test if I could just keep going over my pre-test
Yeah,
most of
good.
the
I'm
time.
glad you
Because
recognize it as such. Let me
like
make
I
sure
think
it's open. It's open now, so you got it because you got a week. We
yeah, but I
won't
have to
be here.
start ahead of the time because doing the way I am, like
All right, let me make sure I can open it up for you.
because I only got like 50 more percent
Yeah, I know.
do
I looked. That's why I'm.
to learn in that lesson. So and then I know, oh, it's just crazy. Like I don't
I can
understand.
tell. I don't want you to. I want to kind of calm your frustrations as much as I can. I want you to know I'm on your side, and I'm going to see if I.
I'm just trying to do my work and get it done. And I just want to pass,
All right, I understand.
finish strong. If I want to finish strong,
Mm-hmm.
I just my anxiety gets in the way. My panic attack gets in the way.
Yeah, believe me, I have the same issues. It took me a while to get through some college courses because of that. All right, so let me make sure that thing's open.
And I've been sick, so
Yeah, it's
um,
can be frustrating because you got much. Plus, I'm sure you got family you gotta
and
take
I
care
work.
of, and your work.
But thank you for making the timing on stuff at 11 something. That way, if I whatever my schedule is, I still got time to do my
Well, I think
work.
it's supposed to be the default is they end at the end of the day, and I can say this: they're supposed to be on that. Though sometimes they do strange things. So it's test 2. So it's open now.
Okay, thank you.
So you should be able to go in there. So I guess you figured out what
Okay.
was going on with that one at the
I
first
did.
hour, huh?
I did.
Okay.
You got to click on everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's the first time you go in there, those pop-ups just crowd you. It
Yeah.
happened to me. That's what I was
Yeah.
telling you. Don't look at the screen because that was
Yeah.
doing the same thing to me. Because when I go in as a student, it's like I'm a brand new student and I got to click through all that stuff.
Yeah. So I did
So
have to. So you got to click on the pop-ups.
yeah,
It didn't
but
allow
I
you
don't
to
think you have
answer
to
the
do
question.
that from after that. At the first time you do it, and they're all going. So let's just make sure it's there, and then I'll let you go.
And
All
I'm
right, so
seeing
it's
this series is similar to the Universal.
yeah, it's hand in hand. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's right there. So you got it.
Okay.
So it's like we got the midterm review. I shouldn't be available yet. I want to fix that. I don't want to, but yeah, it's open, so you can go at it anytime you want now.
Okay.
All
Well, I'll
right,
see
you got
you
anything
later.
else
Thank
I can help you
no,
with?
no, thank you.
All right.
Cause I thought I would have to drop this. I'm like, I'm not doing well.
No, not that, not yet. You got plenty of, you want to be up and rolling and hopefully for the midterm, because if you pass on the midterm, it's going to be a lot easier. But we got one
Yeah,
more test for that. We're going to do it with the lockdown browser just to practice, because the midterm, we got to do it with
yeah.
the
That's no
lockdown.
problem. I just whatever our study sheet is, our study guide exactly that's what's be on the test where I
Yeah,
can
that's it. This is basically a study guide. You just do it.
yeah.
All right.
All right, thank you.
All right. So have a good break, but don't, you
Oh
know,
no, I don't do none of that. I don't do monograph.
well, you let your anxiety, you gotta somehow get a handle on it. And I've kind of
I
started to
am.
do that in recent years. Find out what is creating the anxiety and then use that anxiety to go and explore that to make sure you understand it. So if you're worried about truth tables, you go start with truth tables, go through them and do them, and then
That
gradually
word problem,
things that'll go away.
I know I gotta
Uh-huh.
go back and mess with that. My
All right.
percentages, I mean my rounding, like just like when I'm not feeling
Well,
sure
don't
about
worry
it,
about that so much right
that
now, because that's going to be after midterm. That's why I put it in there to kind of just start waking people up to it.
say that
But yeah,
again.
you're not going to have to worry about all that so much until after midterm.
Uh-huh.
But I put it in there because we need to wake up and realize about rounding that you're going to have to do that. But
Yeah,
that's
it'll be
not until
crazy.
after
Like
midterm.
it'd be on the right side. And it's like when the decimal out there, I just flip. And like, what way do I start counting?
All right. Well, just like I
All
said,
right.
is when we get to it, you ask me about it and I'll show you my
All
stuff,
right.
how I
All
do it.
right.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Thank
All
you.
right.
Enjoy
See you
your
next week.
monographs. All right.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye. Sorry about that.